Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to Raw Knuckles Podcast. Please like, follow, and subscribe. Hey, what's up, everybody? Knuckles here. Listen, it's been over a year we've been doing the Raw Knuckles Podcast, and boy, has time flown. I can't believe it. We've had some great guests, some great moments, some funny moments, some awkward moments, some emotional moments. So we put together the best clips over the past year, and I hope you enjoy.
When I stepped on the ice, I never backed down, and I never stayed down.
And I was vicious, and I was malicious, and I don't care.
I'm alive. He's a freaking madman. Look at him going to town. That'll be a suspension.
I've talked about addiction, alcoholism, and you know what happened with Dad. And have you addressed any of that with your kids?
Absolutely. That was stuff that we spoke with them quite openly about when Bob was alive. I remember being pregnant with Brogan, that Bob was like, oh my gosh, I don't want our kids to know anything about my past, nothing. And it was actually a therapist that guided him through that and answering the questions that were age appropriate at the time. Honesty is definitely the best policy. And seeing that you were showing the kids, we showed the kids that we had weaknesses, we were human, we were far from perfect, and where we came from that, like what we did with that. So that was really important for us to maintain. And Bob did a great job with honesty with the kids. Anytime, I mean, he wouldn't, just go out of his way to talk about it. But if they asked, he always answered honestly. And that continued on in his passing, always, being the mama bear, harping on them of eating properly and, heart disease in the family, addictions in the family. I know at the beginning of COVID, 2 of my kids went away for help, dealing with PTSD. I was so proud of them and them recognizing that they had some issues that they wanted to work on and to deal with. And there was no shame in that. There's no stigma in this household. It's, we talk about it openly and it's healthy. And the girls going out there was the best experience for them. And I have one child's getting into one of my adult children is getting into mental health and addictions. She's taking those courses. The other one's in sports psychology, and the other 2, they're doing such great things. And it's I'm thankful for the groundwork that Bob laid early on with the honesty thing, because if he had left and not been honest with them for all those years and having to deal with it after in his passing, that would have been really difficult. No, but that's the information is out there, right? Like my kids can Google, it's there. What's the point of bullshitting?
And you said talking. Like talking's like the healthiest. That's what saves me right now. It's like because I'm an isolator. Like I don't want to talk to anybody. Like that's kind of naturally why I would do what I do. But it's I have kids, and my kids are 7 and 4.
Communication is key.
Yeah.
And keeping the lines of communication open at all times.
And
that's
I'm not
huge.
doing what I'm doing to tell them. Like I don't judge alcohol or I don't judge. It's just like I'm. Hopefully the hope is that one day they understand, and hopefully they don't remember who that guy, or never have to meet that guy. But like I'm not doing this to tell them they can't ever do and have a drink. It's just the awareness of like, hey, like. Hopefully they know why they're doing things. Because I knew it's like mine was a complete escape, right? Like that's, and I still want to escape at times. I still have talking is. I mean that's awesome. That's awesome. You said that word, and that's what you guys do. Because that is like I think Nux, you said it earlier. You're only sick as your secrets, right? And you
Bob used to say that all the time.
I mean, it's true though.
Absolutely.
And it's
true.
like too. It's like when you talk about it, you realize, and I mean, there's a lot of people that go through things, right? And if you don't talk about it, you're gonna victimize and eventually just feel alone. And it's hard. I mean, I'm not saying it's the easiest thing to do. But,
it's not easy.
Yeah.
No,
honesty and communication.
Listen, that's what they. When you hear people who go through addiction, alcoholism, and you hear them say, "You got to do the work."
Yeah,
it's work.
If you've done the work, then you understand what the work is, and that's part of it. It's being able to address those things, talk about those things which make you uncomfortable, and it's not an easy road, but it's well worth it when you go through that that process. It's not an easy one, but again, well worth it.
It's worth it if you work it, right, Nux?
Yeah, exactly. And listen, I don't get it. Do you think, because when I saw you play, you can certainly skate at that level. You were hard-nosed. You were certainly a useful player, a guy that could certainly, maybe not top six. I wasn't a top six, but you could definitely play in the NHL. There's no question about it. Do you think, your upbringing, where you're from, had an adverse effect on your career in the NHL?
Yes, I definitely do, because when even a coach, one of the coaches, grabbed the stick and he said, "I'll show you Ted Nolan School of Stick Handling," and he started using it like a tomahawk and started pounding it.
That sucks.
And all of a sudden, what are you going to do? I mean, you're your first year pro, and I only knew what I knew, and I charged right after him, and I gave him the biggest sucker punch I could find and jumped on top. and I remember I skated right off the ice, took my equipment off, drove to the little apartment I was renting, told my wife at the time, I said, "Pack up, we're out of here. We're done." He said, "Well, what did you do?" I said, I sucker punched the coach. I said, "I don't think you're going to live with that too long." So anyways, I get a call from the general manager, and he arranges a meeting with the coach, and we went out for a while. We talked out our differences. But I think at the time it was probably so embarrassing for the organization to say, "Hey, how come this kid left?" So we dealt with it, talked about it, and forgot about it. And this is probably the second or third time that I even mentioned the incident.
Wow. Do you think either of your sons are experienced anything like that, or you think times have changed where hopefully they're not dealing with stuff like that? Or what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you know what? With both my boys, I built a hockey rink in my backyard, and just like my brothers taught me, my brother was a pro boxer, and he taught me how to switch hands from left to right. And he said, a lot of hockey players don't know how to do that. He showed me how to punch from the hip and all that stuff. So I started teaching my boys. And as soon as I started teaching them, I'm going, time they turn pro, fighting will be out of the game for sure. I thought. So anyways, Brandon turns pro. Sure enough, the fighting's still there. So I said, "Jordan, we're going to teach them to fight." So you just have to teach them to defend themselves. But their upbringing and my upbringing was totally different. I mean, their fridge was always full. The heat, if we wanted air conditioning, we went and got air conditioning. They needed a ride to the rink, I give them a ride. So their life was a lot different. And we were kind of like mother and Papa Bear. We went to every practice. We watched the behaviors of the coach, see if anybody said anything derogatory to them. And so, no, they didn't have too much outside of the odd stuff, facing some opposition.
Well, that's good. And certainly there has been progress made, but it's nowhere certainly where it needs to be. And you start your career there, and then off to Buffalo that next season through 97. Now, God, that whole Buffalo thing with you, and I watched it, man, and it seemed to me from afar and not knowing, but seemed to me your teams would go through the wall for you. They played for you. You looked like you had it going on. Now, what happened in Buffalo? You get the job there. I've heard all sorts of things and rumors, and I know how people talk, and I'm like, man, I have a hard time to believe that. And I want, I guess, to give you an opportunity to set the record straight here and let people know the real deal. And we spoke about what it was. I've heard everything. You slept with the goalie's wife. You fucking did this, the owner, everything. And I'm like, man, it doesn't, from what I knew of you, and I knew you from afar. And honestly, I thought Ted Nolan was a nice guy. I couldn't see him doing that. Shed some light onto that whole Buffalo situation if you can.
Well, Chris, I had a long time to analyze it and try to figure it out myself, because I went into a very dark place about a year after I was let go by Buffalo because of all the stuff that you just said. and
Crazy.
actually the stuff that you just said, and people are actually believing it. And I'm
Yeah.
going, and then all of a sudden you start talking about defamation of character, and you start talking about all this stuff. I'm going, and I called a good friend of mine. I said, Ted, when somebody has a multi-billion-dollar corporation and a little guy like you going to fight, you haven't got a hope in heck of winning anything. So just walk. So I took his advice and I walked away. And I said, I don't want nothing to do with hockey the rest of my life. And I found out all those rumors. I went to a event. I went to a Buffalo Bills. I'd never been to a football game in my life. I went to the tailgating and all that stuff. And I was driving, so I drove home. A gentleman from Buffalo, and he said, "Geez, Coach, is it true?" I said, "What? That you slept with goalie's wife?" I'm going, "What?" So anyways, he said, "That's a rumor all over town." So anyway, I called home right away and I said, "Sam, another rumor I just heard today." And I heard the other ones. I was drunk at practice and drinking all the time and all that stuff. And Chris, probably that one probably hurt the most was the drinking, because my mom was killed by a drunk driver, and I have 6 brothers who are 5 brothers who are alcoholics, and one's still here. 5 of them passed on now already, and because of that. So that one probably hurt the most, was because I try to pride myself on trying to be a good father, trying to be I went out for beers like everybody else did, but to say I was drunk at practice was, and I finally came to the conclusion they couldn't get rid of me because of the record, because our team was we won the Northeast Division title. I just won the Coach of the Year, so they can't get rid of me for
right.
But they get rid of me for that reason. Then they said I was undisciplined. I wouldn't listen to management. But now you find out with the unwanted visitor. I did a little piece for TSN up here in Canada, and one of the first things I was told to do was with Pat LaFontaine got hurt, and I think it was his 6th or 7th concussion, whatever. And anyways, we as I did during my coaching career, I'd call the players into the office, talk to them how the day's going, how's the kids, how the family, and because no one ever asked me. No one ever asked me. He said, "Ted, how's it going in life?" My father just died last week.
Yeah, just get fucking ready to play. That's what
it
was, right?
Forget about that. So I really wanted to. So I talked to Patty. And I looked at his eyes, and his eyes were kind of twirling a little bit. And I'm going, "Geez, he doesn't look good to me." So I asked him. I said, "Patty, how you feeling?" He said, he said, "Good." I said, No, tell me how you're really feeling. Not because I'm just asking you the question, how you feeling. You're just going to say, "Yeah." No, tell me how you really. I said, "Oh." Then he started crying. Then he started getting emotional. And then I'm going, "Geez, something wrong." So anyway, I told him I'm going to scratch him for the game. We're going to, of all teams, Hartford to play. And I mentioned he's going to stay home and get some rest. I'll make him an excuse that he pulled a groin in practice. The general manager found out that I was doing it. He called me up. He says,
John Muckler.
John Muckler.
Right.
He called me up. He said, "Well, what are you doing?" He said, "You're no doctor. You play him." I said, "We're paying him X amount of dollars, and you're going to play him." I said, "John, I can't. I already give him a day off." I said, You're not listening to me?" I said, "I can't. I already told him." So anyway, he got the owner to call me. Then the owner called me and told me the same thing, and I'm going, I can't. So anyways, I stuck by my guns. Thankfully, I did, because Patty went to the doctor, found out he had post-concussion syndrome. And after they found out, I thought I was going to get a slap on the back to say, "Good job, we never saw that." It was, no, Ted doesn't listen to people. And all of a sudden, the drunks and
all the rumors,
all the other rumors started, and they just crucified me. And even I had one of the owners in the documentary saying, "Well, the plan was to give him an offer that we knew he would refuse." So we got it right on video that the gentleman said it. So all that stuff combined, I'm going, "Geez, I just really want." We're only here for a short time, Chris. We're not here for a long time, and I really want to enjoy my life. So I just walked away. Until
you, and obviously, because Tim and I certainly can speak from experience, when you get sober, you do find out who you are. That's for sure. And when you dilute yourself with drugs and alcohol, it certainly doesn't help knowing
those drugs are so awesome, though. I love them so much.
Yeah,
Wanna go
don't
back.
get us
Yeah,
wrong. There was a
like-
lot of fun times, you know.
So Stapes, I gotta have sober sex, sober golf the rest of my life. Come on, what's this?
Oh God! You got me on that one. I'm fucking tongue tied now.
Yeah, and I talk about the loving the drugs I did because it took away my pain.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
I would go on. I was buying my bags of ecstasy and Molly and stuff, 100 at a time, and I'd be up for 3-4 days.
How the fuck could you play? Well, you had to have that in you to play. Fuck, right?
Well, this was
I
after,
drank-
right?
My drugs were hard after, really hard after. I was always drinking. I was always a part of it. Play guilty. Some of my best games. But the game hit me hard after I hit the drugs very hard. Got divorced. Lost all that. I always say when I'm counseling people, trying to get guys to have two identities, and what I mean by that is, guys' identities usually wrapped in their job.
Yeah.
And you lose that identity or that purpose, you've got nothing. It doesn't matter how much money you have. You don't have a purpose to get up. You have nothing. And I was told where to be and when to be and how to be for 40 years. And now I got nothing. Now everybody said who's going to be there is gone. Nobody hired me. Nobody, I sold my Stanley Cup ring at one point in time. It was just, it was some dark times.
Yeah, I guess. And we've certainly been through them ourselves, Tim and I. But, everybody has their own story. And, that pain, certainly when you numb it, and I did it for years myself. And then you got to come to and wake up and grow up, basically. And not something that's easy to do, but it's well worth it once you get honest with yourself. So Willie, the OCD, and you explained at one time, like being in a corner like a scared animal. Like, shit, how about being in a situation where, and I've been in plenty of these, and I'm sure you have, and you, Tim, too, where something bad happens in one game, you got that rivalry team you're up against, and you're going in that next game, and the shit's gonna happen. Shit's hitting the fan. Someone's dropping the gloves. Someone's gonna get slashed. Someone's gonna get cross-checked, and it's coming. Like, how did that affect you?
I would act sick. I would just have the flu. I would have the flu.
No, we know. Would that be the Filipino flu?
Yeah. It's just the flu. We call it just the flu.
Okay.
Obviously, I was in a slightly different role where I wasn't too, and the game has changed. With that, game changed. It changed.
But they had some.
Yeah. No, but I had. Right? The big games, which is weird, like the playoffs, where I just felt like I was out of my mind type thing. Like, yeah, it would certainly build. Yeah, it was difficult, but it really felt like every game was kind of like that. And I was more worried about I think I felt more like the back-to-backs, or if I had 4 and 6, a 4 and 6 or something like that. That's where I was kind of like, oh shit, like this one's going to be very difficult because there's going to be no chance for me to recover here. I know I can't sleep. So those would be more difficult when I was looking at the schedule, versus anything. And it didn't really matter. I was thinking so much about kind of myself and my skates that other.
I was gonna say, like, were you just like, fuck, I gotta tie my skates a lot?
I was like, I don't care.
This road trip.
I don't care if I'm playing against Crosby or not. Like, I gotta get my skates right again. So it's it felt more to that. But I do remember it was against the Chicago Blackhawks, game 1. I really played literally out of my mind. I had 2 goals in the first period, and I went into the game going, how am I going to play this one? So that was a good testament to the way the brain works, because it's just somewhere in there that I can skate, and continue to do that.
How about the brain working this way? All the macho stuff in the NHL locker room and on the ice and playing with pain and da-da-da. Were you worried that teammates would find out and maybe be a little embarrassed by your OCD? Did that ever kind of play in?
It was weird because even though I knew, I had something going on, like from 19 on, I was kind of like, okay, there's something there. Yeah, I think it still became a very difficult position, even when recognizing that something had to change. Just the vulnerable piece. I think anybody, the locker room is a little bit more masculine for sure. But I think everybody has difficulties with humility and vulnerability. And for somebody like myself who really had never tried to experience any of those aspects, I think it became, more challenging regardless of where I was. But I mean, even within that, I think my Colorado locker room and the guys were pretty great and pretty open, and like Tyson Berry and Nathan McKinnon, I would actually like talk to them all the time about it, and we all talked about our stuff, so it actually turned into pretty healthy relationships within the room.
This episode's brought to you by Betterhelp. It's easy to get swept up into the fast pace of life, so much so that we often forget about ourselves. I know because it happened to me, and most of you know I battled addiction and have been clean and sober for years. I thought I could confront these issues on my own, but sadly, and I found out the hard way, I couldn't. I've become a big believer in the positive impact that therapy can have on someone. It helped me to learn some positive coping skills and also how to set some of those healthy boundaries. It actually empowered me to be the best version of myself. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, I suggest BetterHelp. It's entirely online, it's convenient, it's flexible, and you can arrange everything to fit your own schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. Quite frankly, I wish BetterHelp was around when I was looking for help. It's so easy and flexible. Find more balance with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/rawknuckles today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/rawknuckles. So I want to ask you, and a lot of people outside of Philly area and probably the hockey world, some. When did you get married to Karen, Dave?
I got married to Karen in
during your career?
1989, yeah.
Was she from Philadelphia?
She was from the South Jersey area, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And for those of you who don't know, and Tim, I'm not sure, Dave's lost his wife, Karen. She had an aneurysm. They were for dinner one night. And when I read that, and I hate to bring up a sore spot, but, here you are, your second career is going good, and then you get hit with that. I can only imagine how extremely difficult it was for you. And honestly, when I read it, I was just like, man. And then having met you down in Philly, I felt bad certainly for your wife and what happened to her, but you too, and moving on from that, not an easy thing. Those years for you, bouncing back from that, how difficult was it?
Well, that was hard, and I was with the Rangers and that, and they gave me a lot of room for me to collect myself. I mean, I struggled probably for 2-3 years. I really did. I mean, something like that, you just never think that something like that's going to happen to you. And I think everybody has something similar to that in their own life, but
right,
somebody so close to you like that, and then just all of a sudden, she basically, she collapsed in front of me, and I think you still take some problems like after that. Like I always have some regret that I couldn't have done more.
Yeah.
I think about, I think, just wonder if I could have done something different to maybe saved her. But I mean, looking back on in reality, she collapsed and she was gone immediately.
Wow.
But I mean, I think it affects you in some ways that you don't realize it. You maybe see it later, but I really miss her. And So some days I think, man, did that really happen? It's like, it's an unbelievable situation when something like that happens. You just never think anything like that's going to happen to you.
Well, God bless you, and certainly your family, and thinking of Karen, again, a difficult thing to go through. And I wanted to address it because I just know, and I can only imagine how difficult it was on you. The infamous tape, the infamous Uber ride. And, you know, when I look at it and I listen to that, I'm going to sit here and tell you, I don't know how many fucking people have done that. And I think, obviously, the Uber driver is a rat fuck weasel. But, you know, I've been in cabs before, the shit we've said as players about coaching staffs and that. And I look the other way, too. The way coaches talk about fucking players. Like, all of a sudden, you know, like, players can't talk about coaches. And anyway, we know what was said. Do you think when it come out, how shocked were you that it come out, one? And two, did you have that, like, were you sick to your stomach feeling, you know, when it came out?
Yeah, no, I think, that's one of those moments in your life you basically remember every detail about, you know, everything that played out over that week or 10 days when everything was kind of coming out. And you know, I had my mother-in-law in town and, you know, we found out before the game and then after the game, seeing them and just kind of letting them know, like, hey, this is going to come out and it's going to change our lives. I'm not sure how and how much, but it's going to, and, you know, just kind of the fallout from all of that. And, you know, I don't know if I can get into too many details, but, you know, it was a really, really tough time, in my life. And, you know, I not taking away from, you know, what was said, because, you know, we were, you know, we felt bad about what had happened, and we felt bad for the coach that was talked about, and just kind of everything that happened. It just seemed like, you know, no matter what we said, it wasn't going to be enough to express our, you know, sincere apologies, and that was difficult too, because I think each one of us felt sorry, and it was hard to express that, and it was kind of hard to stick together, because it almost felt like it was every man for themselves. And, you know, I ended up being traded and kind of moved around a little bit that year. And, you know, it was probably harder on my wife and my family, because, each team I went to, I had 20 guys that were, you know, as supportive as they could be. And, you know, I really was hard on myself that year. It affected my play. You know, I would lay in bed every single night and think, you know, did I just ruin my career? And, you know, it took a long time to come to terms with that. And, you know, I think I'm finally, you know, in a place where I have that behind me, but it's something that I learned a lot from. I you know, went to the minors, I went to Russia, I did all these things that, you know, I had to build myself up as a player and as a person. And, you know, I'm really happy with the, you know, the father and the husband and the player that I am today because of everything I've went through.
Yeah, no, I mean, internally within the game though, like a lot of guys had to like understand, you know what I mean? Like Chris said to begin with, like, I mean, I think that's so normal. I know it's,
and again, this is not a poor me. Like, I don't want anyone to feel sorry for me. And again, for every,
you know, like
for every, you know, for every negative comment that was directed towards me or one of the other guys, I think that there was probably 3 or 4 positive comments, like, hey man, like, you know, shit happens, you know, I got your back, blah, blah, blah. Well, that was tough. And you know, when it came to July 1, there wasn't really many options, you know, and whether that was because of my play or because of what had happened, I don't know. I can tell you that my play for sure suffered because of what happened. You know, instead of focusing on hockey, I'm thinking about something that happened in an Uber ride in November in Arizona. So it really, and again, I'm not looking for sympathy, but the honest to God truth, it fucked me up mentally, where I could no longer focus on being the hockey player that I was that got me to the NHL, and it fucked me up. And I have never spoken publicly about this, and I never wanted to, but that's the honest to God truth.
I appreciate your honesty, and honest, and it's not easy to talk about. And we've all done things. I've done shit that afterwards it shook me to the core, right? And do you want that second chance? Do you deserve that second chance? When I look at it, like you're the fucking easy guy to send out the door, and that's what it was. It's like some of those other guys, they continued playing, they're still there, but you're the fucking guy who paid the price, and you're not the only one who spoke. That being said, our lives end up going, I believe, things turn out the way they're supposed to turn out, and things do happen for reasons. This happened, and I believe people deserve second chances, and you certainly have those redeeming qualities. In just a short time I've known you, the short time I've watched you play, and I'm so happy you were able to rebound from this and get another chance, not just in hockey, in the fucking NHL, not just in Russia, not just but in the NHL. So I'm happy that you got that second chance and you got that opportunity again. Everybody is a tough guy. Mike Tyson said it, until they get punched in the face. Okay? Yeah. And and I watched these, and Tim watched me. I've seen them before, but I watched them again today. And Tim was here and Barry was here, and I actually get sick to my stomach watch. I do. It makes me cringe when I see another tough guy, something bad happen to him, and I get it can happen. Was the first one, you broke your orbital bone against Eric Cairns in the island. Then the boogeyman, you end up just shattered your face. I mean, I was sick to my freaking stomach watching it. And then the last one in New York with Orr, you got knocked out cold. And I saw you laying there on the ice, and your hands were up like this. And I'm like, man, I felt
good shot.
Yeah, it was like, so you go through these things, and people don't understand what a guy goes through when everybody's rah-rahing and they want you to win the fight, but they don't know what the fighter goes through. Those 3 injuries alone, after one of them, a lot of guys would have never been the same or would have packed it in. How the hell were you able to bounce back each time? First Cairns, then you come back to the boogeyman, they rebuild your face, boom, you come back, and then you get knocked. Hello, how did you bounce back from that? That's difficult.
I don't know. I never looked at it like that. I mean, I knew they were injuries, but I guess I trusted the doctors, and I mean, it was my livelihood. And the first Cairns one, it wasn't. It was a break, but it was fixable and probably stronger after. And the guy that I had to do it, Dr. Guy Lanzi, he's the best. Mm-hmm. He was one of the guys that invented some of the zygomatic arch implants and stuff. So I asked him, he goes, like, am I still going to be okay? And he goes, you're doing what you do is bone on bone. It's going to break no matter what. So, but when it heals and you give it time, yeah, it'll be just as strong as it was. So I trusted these guys, and I mean, the true test is getting punched in the face.
Yeah, the physical part. That's the physical part. How about I'm saying the confidence part, the shaking your confidence, and how do I get back from that? How'd you dealing with it personally? Like, I get the physical part. You heal.
Yeah, but I didn't have a choice. If I wanted to keep playing, I couldn't show that was going to bother me. It was like, get back on the horse, and it's almost the crazier you were. They were like, they'd leave you alone, and they'd be like, no, this kid, keep him around, man. Like he'll do whatever, And I took a sense of pride in it for some reason, but probably, I mean, I was self-destructive at that point. Like, I was going after, trying to stay in the game after those injuries. Well, I guess that would be the starting point of it. With the injuries, I obviously had surgeries and stuff, and that was a big one. But when I got hit on this side, this fight I actually thought that I did pretty good in. Like, that's what's different. Like, I took one in it, and like I knew something was off, but it didn't hurt that bad. Like, I remember hitting Karen, so the confidence wasn't down that bad, and I was just too dumb to probably realize how bad that injury was. But got it fixed, and then when Bugard hit me though, that was something else, because I remember getting hit. I didn't get knocked out, and I remember the linesman telling me stay down, like he could see the face, and I knew as well that it was messed up, because you don't see as well out of the eye, and it wasn't like it was a swelling or anything or there was blood around it. It was like pressure pushing my eye to see like wall-eyed. It was looking somewhere else, and I went like this on my face and knew that I could tell where his fist had hit, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna stay down here. And then the linesman helped me up, and I knew that I had to go directly off because my face was broken. Like, you can tell when you get a good break. I don't know if anybody can tell as bad as this one, but it basically took this bone and just moved it all the way up to my nose and just blew out everything else that was in there. So my eye was saved.
Thank God.
But I mean, geez, how many plates I got put in there? Well, I think there's 12 in there now. Most of them were from the Bugard fight, and that's the one. Like, they do say, you'll change, and that was the one that changed me. Like,
are you better looking though? And how did it change you?
I don't know. You ask my wife; she thinks I know I look like a catcher's mitt in my face.
How did it change you? You said it changed you. How did it change you?
Well, you got to understand that at that time in my life, there was things that were different. Like, I had family, and I was married with kids, and it's like there's a lot more on the line, and it's I have to have longevity now, right? Because we're making the least amount ever, right? We still have to do stuff after the game. We still got to work and stuff. There's not many guys can just retire on what they earned, and I wasn't one for sure. So I needed to keep playing because I was still young at that time. I was in the prime, and had a couple good seasons, and I just took probably, I think it was, man, I don't even know when I came back. That whole season, that whole year after that injury, I getting traded back to Philly, and I mean, the doctor told my wife that my career is over, like while I was in the hospital. And I remember the guys coming to see me in the hospital, like Niedermeyer was with Anaheim at that time, and they just said, like, you're going to be okay. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to play in a bit. Like, I'm going to see how fast. This is just broken bones.
It'll heal.
My body and everything is still okay. I can play still. I'm going to see how quickly I can come back, put me in a cage. Like, that was my mentality. And people were like, yo, man, you got to seriously consider, retiring. And it didn't cross my mind at that moment, even with that bad of an injury. So I don't know, whatever. It turned out, I guess, okay, because I still kept playing. But then again, I got hurt again. But again, like, even when I was trying to come back, like, the mask came off, guys were like, when I was asking them to go, they didn't want
to hurt you. About a couple of teammates, and I'm going to start with one. And what you thought of him, and did you ever see coming what became of him? And that's Rick Rippon.
Yeah, love Ripper. You know what, with Ripper, listen, I got traded to Vancouver my first year, and we were both living at the Sutton Place Hotel. And this is before I really knew what was going on with Rip. But, I'd come back from lunch or dinner, and there'd always be a do not disturb sign on his door. And I'm like, fuck this, what's going on with this guy? And, took a leave of absence the first year, and then came back for the playoffs. And then the offseason, and then our second year in Vancouver, I seen something switch with Rip that, he was happy, and we became really good buddies. Ripper was, I was telling you the story about the Sunday on the patios in Vancouver. Ripper was with me all day that day. Met a girl that year, was happy with her. Obviously something went wrong there. So to answer your question, I always knew that Rip was dealing with something. I thought he had turned a corner, the second year in Vancouver. And when I heard the news, crushed like everybody else. People maybe don't know about Ripper. Great sense of humor, funny guy, love to laugh. And I mean, you talk about tough knuckles. I mean, this guy, are you kidding me? Like this guy, and could play, like make plays, score goals, hit, and just absolutely sit in the pocket and fight.
You know what?
He wasn't very big either, was he?
No. And he would go lefty knuckles and he would hold that left up and block it.
Yeah.
And then he wasn't very big.
It's a shame because it's terrible to see how people slip through the cracks, even when they have an issue. We think of the former USA gold medalist and NHL Ranger, Mark Pavelich, right? Rick Rippon, in a day and age where mental health was, starting to be looked at more, still not where it is today. And a guy slips through the cracks like that. It's and sometimes there might be something wrong with someone and they're having issues and you're trying to work with them. And, people obviously for different reasons don't open up and don't accept the help either. And I'm not saying he didn't. It's just a shame when you see someone slip through the cracks like that. But and he's not the only one.
It really was.
So my wife and I became separated when we were living there. And for the last year of my contract, she moved back to Canada with the kids. So I'd fly back every second weekend. So I went from someone, okay, you're really going to have another drink, to I've got no guardrails. So I'm like, oh my God, I can go out till all hours and no one's going to give me trouble. Got into a relationship where the person I was in again, I'm not blaming the relationship. I got into a relationship that went in line with what I wanted, which was full green lights. It was never, maybe we should cut it off here, to no, let's order another couple bottles of wine.
Rip it.
Yeah.
Fucking
so I got into that and carried that back to Canada. So to answer your question, when I'd get done work, the kids would be asleep when they were here. And if they weren't, then crack a bottle of wine, have a couple of joints. Well, that bottle's of wine's done. So I'm going to have a couple of old fashions, stagger up to bed, repeat the process on the weekends without the kids.
Well, what time would you get to bed? 4
or 5. Always hungover.
Sleep all day.
Take the kids to school, then come home and sleep. And then if I didn't have the kids, just sleep all day. And then on the weekends, we had Friday, Saturdays off. So wake up, it's screwdriver time. And then just rip it up. So got out of control. And I remember actually one weekend in which I was on the phone with someone, because you're always making phone calls. I now look back, I'm like, those drunk phone calls, you always think, oh, this person's going to enjoy this. No, they don't.
What a conversation.
I got some really important things I'm gonna say.
So I always would keep the party going. So one night I'm here at the house and I call a friend and I'm doing whatever. And I hear the music playing in the kitchen. I'm like, I'm going to go see if anyone's still here. And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, I was going to see if the party's still going in the kitchen. They're like, you're home alone. And I'm like, oh boy. I think that's where I'm like, I think I've got a problem. But then I still would negate those thoughts with more alcohol and more weed. So that's where I started to realize, okay, maybe this is getting out of control. And where I really hit my spot in which I said, okay, I need help, was I get laid off from my work from Bell on a Wednesday of Super Bowl week. So the kids get picked up regular time on a Friday. And I'm like, of course, when you're an alcoholic, you have every reason to celebrate.
Did you say laid off?
I'm suppose I was laid off, not fired.
You got fucking fired.
Business decision,
you got
Knuckles.
Fired.
I got fired.
All right.
So,
all right.
when you're an alcoholic, you have every reason to drink. If it's a celebration, if it's a death in the family, if it's losing your job. So I'm like, holy shit, this is my Super Bowl. So I dialed it up tenfold, and people arrived at my house Friday night, and I'm like, oh, they're here to party. But now I know, in looking at it from a distance, they were here to make sure I stayed alive. They weren't here to party with me, and they would, one person would leave, another person would come back. I'm like, oh, look at this. Look at this. They're here to party. Jay showed up on the Saturday. He's like, I'm coming out to see you. I'm like, all right. So he sat around, we shot the shit. And then on Sunday was a Super Bowl party at my friend's house, and I turned it up a notch there. At one point, you mentioned my before and after picture. I have a cut on my head because I lost the fight with gravity, fell, hit my head on their fridge. And he says, yeah, we saw you falling. We saw it happen, and we couldn't get there in time. So I woke up in his house with the cut on my head, staring at the prospect of, okay, I've worked for 22 years nights. So all of a sudden, I'm going to have nights in which work isn't going to get in the way of my drinking. So it's going to be clear path to just drink and smoke weed all day. I'm like, this is not going to end well. So I literally woke up that day, the Monday after Super Bowl, and said, I need help.
Having said that, Tim, I came very close to losing my job, and year one, I'm getting crucified in the daily newspaper, in the Montreal Gazette. I'm getting destroyed.
Welcome to the club.
Like this guy, right? And who does he think he is?
Welcome to the club, Tony.
Yeah, he doesn't even know how to speak English. And the fact of the matter is, my English, was not great. And it probably still isn't. Like, I speak and understand 5 languages: English, French, Italian, Spanish, Portuguese. But I do neither of them very well. So, I was getting crucified. I was trying to find my way. My ratings weren't very good. And by the way, I know exactly what I did wrong. All right. Besides the fact I was raw and I was nervous and I wasn't very polished, the one thing I was doing wrong is I was trying to be somebody I wasn't. And the person that I used to be, that used to call the radio show as a teenager, I was trying to be this professional guy. Like, I was trying to sound like Pierre Maguire, so very polished, so very professional. Well, Pierre Maguire is polished and he is professional. Tony Marinaro, that's not him. Tony Marinaro is not polished. Tony Marinaro isn't always professional. Tony Marinaro sometimes doesn't have a filter and will say something that he might regret, but he says it. And so about a year later, I get called into the office, and the general manager at the time was the late Lee Hamilton. So he calls me into the office with Wayne Buse, and he tells me that he's not happy with my progress. He's not happy with my results.
Ooh.
And he wants to get rid of me.
Ooh, I didn't know this.
Yeah, and so Wayne Buse says, listen, why don't we do this? All right. We'll give you a month. And, or he talks Lee Hamilton into giving me a month. Let's give him a month. Now that he knows what we don't like, now that he knows what's not going well, let's see how he responds. Let's see if he can turn it around. Unfortunately, I didn't respond very well because the pressure I felt, instead of bringing out the best in me, it actually made me even more nervous.
Yeah. Huh?
So 1 month later, Nux, I go into the office, and today's doomsday, right? I'm getting fired. So Wayne calls me into his office, and he says to me, he says, we're supposed to meet with Lee Hamilton.
But he got fired.
I know. And he says, listen, Tony, he was going to fire you today. He says, but he died 4 hours ago.
Oh, Jesus.
I said, are you kidding me or what? And he said, no. He said he had terminal cancer, and I didn't even know. He says, I got a phone call from his wife this morning telling me that he passed away, and I had no idea that he had terminal cancer. So Wayne said, listen.
Crazy.
I'm going to hold on to you. I have a feeling you're going to be a star one day. Now, so just go out there and prove me right. Go out there and be you. and it was a turning point for me. And I tried to be more myself. And with more shows and more hours behind the microphone, Nux, I got more and more comfortable. And, I did the afternoon drive for 2.5 years. Then I did the morning show for 2.5 years. And then one day Wayne says, I want to take you out to lunch. And he takes me out to lunch. And Elliot Price and Sean Starr back then were doing the show at 10 a.m. And I know they really wanted to do the show at 6 a.m. that I was doing so that they can, Elliot was an avid golfer at the time. And he wanted to golf. I mean, he whispered in Wayne Buse's ear on a couple of occasions, hey, if you're ever thinking of making a change with that 6 o'clock show, I'd love to have that slot. And to be honest with you, I mean, even though it's a prestigious slot to have, morning radio, your personal life sucks. You got to go to bed early. I woke up early every morning. I felt like a zombie. I'm not a morning person. So anyway, Wayne took me to lunch and he goes, we're going to change slots and you're going to do your own show now at 10 a.m. And Price and Starr are going to go in the morning. And I was like, wow, like, is this good for my career? Like, I'm going from morning man. And Wayne said, trust me when I tell you this is going to be the best thing that could have happened for your career. First of all, it'll be the best thing that can happen to your personal life because you're going to be able to sleep now. Secondly, he said, the 10 a.m. slot is so tough to get ratings because obviously out of all the slots, it's the one that has the least cars on the road. So, but if there's someone that can make something out of nothing, he goes, it's you. And I really believe that in this slot at 10 a.m., your personality can come out a lot more than it can co-hosting at 6 a.m. So he said, so I said, okay. And as it turns out, I did that show for about 15 years. And he was right. It's the greatest thing that could have happened to me. Why? If I didn't have a good book, I wasn't expected to have a good book. It's a tough slot for ratings. If I had a very good book, wow. If I ended up finishing number 1 in ratings, wow. So it was a win-win situation. My personal life was better. I was able to be more myself on that show. I was pretty much doing it myself between 10 and noon. I mean, I had an op, but I took up a lot of the airtime. I got my own guests. I did my own thing, and it really was the best thing that could have happened to me at the time.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the Raw Knuckles podcast. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe.